destroyed the German army. We destroyed our share of them with the British, but we were operating against a very weakened German army, much reduced in scope and size. I don't know if you follow those battles, but yeah.
80% of all German soldiers killed were killed by the Russians.
Yeah. I don't know if you followed those battles. They were just immense, weren't they? I mean, Stalingrad was like a meat grinder. And Kursk was huge, huge battle. You know, everyone fought to the death in these battles. There was no quarter given and no quarter asked. It was an incredible struggle, frankly. Anyway, 20 million Russians died, which is, okay, we had 1 million Americans who were killed in the Second World War. That's quite a lot of people, but nothing like 20 million. You know, we wouldn't even be able to imagine what 20 million is. I mean, we're sitting here, I mean, it's not nice, the Iraq struggle. It's probably not been handled and misguided, but we're crying over 2,000 or 3,000, which is kind, it's good. I think it's right to do that, but what would this country do if there were 20 million? I don't think we would even understand what that was like. Anyway, so yeah, those countries are all gone, those communities. And there live millions who pray fervently every day to God of their fathers for the restoration, yeah, in their prayers. They preserve the living kernel. Here's that thing about the living kernel that the Science of Judaism people are talking about, the Reformer throwing out. So he's aware of these arguments between the Reform, the Conservative, and the Science of Judaism people. The sense of Jewish nationality more faithfully than our Western, Occidental is Western. The Western Jew brethren, the Western Jews would breathe new life in the whole of our religion, but they ignore the great hope which created our faith and is preserved through all the tempests of history, the hope of restoration. This is what you're asking about here. I turn to the faithful millions of my brothers and explain, you know, this is the living kernel, and this it will, you know, it will be preserved. The rigid forms of orthodoxy, which were entirely justified before this rebirth century, can become creative again. You know, Judaism is frozen in place with orthodoxy. You know, we have to let it become creative, like the Science of Judaism school wants it to be. But to be valid, such creativity must come from within, from the living idea of the nationality. You see, he's got it imbued with European nationalism of the mid-19th century. Only a national renaissance, by the way, that national renaissance has not occurred among the Jews. Jews participated in American culture, great Jewish writers. I don't consider Philip Roth a great Jewish writer. I think he's full of self-hatred and shameful of some of the things that he presents as literature. It comes from a town near me. I know the people he grew up with. I knew his cousin. I knew the girl he writes about in Goodbye Columbus. They were from my hometown. I know all about his work, and I think his work is really insulting work. And he's a pathetic person, so I don't consider that part of the Jewish Renaissance. But in any case, there are a lot of Jewish writers like Bernard Malamud and others who have contributed to the American literary scene and so on, and movie making and these different things, the Beatniks, Ginsberg, all these people, Bob Dylan, etc. And, you know, a lot of English, French, German letters, etc. But this Jewish Renaissance that he's talking about has never occurred. Never occurred. I feel that's sad, actually. And one of the things that holds it back is this. The Reform on the one hand, who go whole hog one way, and the Orthodox on the other hand who strangle it. So the living kernel he's talking about never got a chance to live. So anyway. Only in a national renaissance can they endow the religious genius of the Jews and so on and so forth. I hope that someday that will happen, but I don't know if it ever will. The Enlighteners, the people who follow the Haskalah, have attempted to open the Jewish scene into the light of modern culture by piercing the hard shell. He understands the problems here which Rabbinism has armored Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism, has given it the shell. None of them, not even the great Mendelssohn, who we've been studying here, could succeed in doing this without destroying the innermost essence of Judaism, its historical national religion, and thus doing a sacred life to death. Well, he's quite elegant in what he says. I'm reading it. I mean, I have nothing to add to this. I'm reading it because I assume that you don't. So these religious reformers, he says that they've happily vanished almost completely. He's wrong. They haven't vanished at all. And as this young lady has remarked, they're pretty much everywhere still. And I don't know where he gets that idea. With their newly invented ceremonies, who's he talking about there? Israel, Jacobson, and Cece, their newly invented ceremonies. He knows what we've been studying. He is in our mindset of this class. This is the newly invented ceremonies. And what does he say about them? Have sucked the marrow out of Judaism. Yeah, you know, he can really, he's got a good pen. It was not enough for them to, and have left only a shadow skeleton of this most magnificent of all historical forms. Well, you know, he overdoes it, but anyway. It was not enough for them to work toward the development of a Jewish learning on modern scientific lines. We had this, didn't we? We know all about this, don't we? Scientific Judaism, Haskalah, Abraham Geiger. We know all about these people. No, it wasn't enough. And to satisfy the need for orderly and aesthetic form of our ancient religious practice, they cultivated a religious reform that was not in keeping with the spirit of the age. This is all what we've been saying. In other words, they claim zeitgeist. There's no zeitgeist in their thing. The spirit of the age is nationalism, and therefore nationalism out the window. It was fashioned in imitation of Christian models and was therefore stillborn. Well, it wasn't, obviously. It's still around and flourishing quite well. It has not the slightest basis either in the general situation of the modern world or the essential national character of Judaism. Well, personally, I would agree with him there, but I don't know what should and does. I haven't got the answer. Because this Renaissance hasn't occurred that he was looking for. I don't deny the validity of the Christian Reformation. You guys find Hess interesting enough that we can continue? I think, if you don't mind, we can go through it. At the time of Luther, nor the Jewish Reform movement at the time of Mendelssohn. The latter, however, see, we know everything what he's talking about. We've already been through this material. The latter, however, was more of an aesthetic than a religious or ideological reform. Luther is talking about. No, Mendelssohn is talking about. These reformers never dreamed of tampering with the historical basis of the religion. But our contemporary reformers propose